Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down big ideas. Today, we're diving into Daniel Pink's book, To Sell is Human. And let me tell you, it basically flips everything you thought you knew about sales on its head. It argues that, like it or not, we are all in the business of moving others. This line, man, it just perfectly captures that classic image we all have of a salesman, right? That kind of desperate, maybe even a little bleak push to close a deal. It's an image that's been burned into our brains for decades. But what if that whole idea is just outdated? What if the entire game has changed so much that those old stereotypes don't even make sense anymore? What if we're all selling something all the time, whether it's a new car or just trying to get our kids to eat their vegetables? To really get a grip on this huge shift, we've got to start with one person, a man who represents the absolute end of an era. He's like a living piece of history, just walking the streets of modern-day America. Meet Norman Hall. Now, he's not some tech billionaire or a slick venture capitalist. Nope. This guy sells feather dusters, toilet brushes, and steel sponges, door to door. He is the living, breathing embodiment of what selling looked like in the 20th century. You heard that right. In a city where there used to be dozens of Fuller Brushmen, Norman is the very last one. He's a walking symbol of a sales model that feels totally obsolete in a world where you can get a toilet brush delivered in an hour with just one click. And, this story really paints the picture we all kind of believe, right? That just like the Fuller Brushman, the whole profession of selling is just fading away. I mean, why would you need a salesperson when you have the entire internet in your pocket? But here's where things get really, really interesting. Because when you stop guessing and you actually look at the data, it tells a completely different story, a much more surprising one. So despite all the talk about the death of the salesman, get this. 1 out of every 9 American workers is still in what we'd call traditional sales. That's over 15 million people. To put that in perspective, that's a bigger workforce than the entire U.S. federal government. The salesperson is not dead, not even close. But the really big story here, the one that probably includes you, isn't about selling products for money. It's about what Pink calls non-sales selling. This is what you're doing when you pitch an idea to your boss or try to convince your colleagues to get on board with a project. It's all about moving other people. So how much time are we actually spending doing this? Well, the research is pretty shocking. The other 8 out of 9 of us, the people who aren't in sales, we spend about 40% of our time at work moving others. Think about that. That's about 24 minutes of every hour spent just persuading, convincing, and influencing. So the big question is, how did this happen? How did we all end up in the moving business without even really signing up for it? Well, Pink points to 3 massive forces that got us here. He calls them the 3 E's: entrepreneurship, elasticity, and EdMed. These are the huge trends that have totally reshaped how we work and put persuasion right at the heart of, well, pretty much everything. First up is entrepreneurship. The funny thing is, the same tech that was supposed to kill sales has actually turned more of us into sellers. I mean, think about platforms like Etsy or eBay. They've created millions of tiny businesses, and if you run one of those, you have to do everything, especially sell. The second E is elasticity. In today's economy, having just one narrow job description is kind of a liability. Companies need people who can stretch, who have elastic skills. An engineer can't just be an engineer. She also has to be able to persuade clients and pitch ideas. Suddenly, selling becomes a part of everyone's job. And finally, EdMed. Now this one is huge. The biggest and fastest growing part of the entire U.S. economy is now education and health services. And what is the absolute core task of a teacher or doctor or nurse? It's moving people, moving them to learn, to change their habits, to get healthy. Okay, so those are the big picture trends happening out there in the world. But let's bring this home for a second. Let's make this personal and see how this actually applies to you in your work week. All right, let's start with that first E. Do you work for yourself? Run your own business? Maybe even just a side hustle on the weekends? If the answer is yes, then guess what? You're responsible for everything, which means you are definitely in the moving business. How about elasticity? Is your job description kind of blurry? Are you constantly having to go beyond your official duties, pitch ideas in meetings, convince other departments to help you? If so, yep, you are practicing non-sales selling every single day. And finally, EdMed. This one's pretty simple. Do you work in a school or a hospital, a classroom or a clinic? If you do, your main purpose, the very heart of your job, is to move people toward a better place. So, if we've established that pretty much all of us are in sales now, one way or another, we have to deal with the elephant in the room. We have to confront that really negative reputation that comes with the territory. Yeah, when the book surveyed people and asked them for the first word they think of when they hear sales, these were the answers: pushy, sleazy, yuck, dishonest. Whew, it's pretty clear that selling has a massive, massive image problem. But here's the thing, and this is maybe the most important point of all. That old, slimy version of sales only worked because the seller had all the information and the buyer had none. The internet completely blew that up. We've gone from a world of caveat emptor or buyer beware to caveat vendidor, seller beware. In this world, being transparent and honest isn't just nice, it's the only way to survive. And this all leads to the final big idea. Moving others today isn't about tricking someone or pushing a product they don't need, it's about serving them. It's about bringing some clarity to a complicated world and genuinely trying to make things better for them. It's not a sleazy tactic. It's a core part of what makes us human. So the real question isn't if you're selling, it's how are you going to get better at it?